Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello, and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of our holistic health practice, Trifecta Collective. And this is my co-host, Shannon Callery, the head practitioner of our practice. And today we are talking about eating disorders, disordered eating, restrictive diets, food anxiety, strict elimination diets, all kinds of things related to this topic. And today, what we're really going to do is we're going to share a lot of our personal experiences. They are vast in this topic, as with several other episodes. And we want to share really our experience and our background going into this. And before we dive into this, we know this is a sensitive topic. We know that a lot of people are impacted by some or all of these topics. And so just wanted to throw it out there, a blanket trigger warning. We will be diving deep into all of this, including a lot of trauma and different types of trauma that are related and impact things related to food and eating disorders and disordered eating and relationships around food and that kind of thing. So please be aware of that. Also, I know how many people are impacted by this. And if you are struggling with this, if you need support, please never hesitate to reach out to us. We are not licensed professionals. If it is out of our scope of practice to handle, we will help you find support. It is never a bad idea to reach out for support to a licensed professional, and we will chat about that today as well. I'm sure in a variety of capacities. And so I just want you to be aware that you're not alone. We share this information because we want you to know that you're not alone. And we have both struggled with this in different capacities, and we're going to share those today. And once again, know that you're not alone. There is healing that can come from this. And yeah, there is support where you need it. All you have to do is ask, and we will do our very best. And there's lots and lots of other resources out there as well, but please never hesitate to reach out to us. So I'm going to let Shannon go first here and let her tell a little bit of her story around these topics, and then I'll share mine, and we'll probably chit chat as we go along as well.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for that introduction. I like that. And I think that people, a lot of, I was going to say females, but I do think it's males and females, maybe a little bit more females, may not even realize that they have disordered eating patterns. I know I didn't. I don't know how you started. But for me, I truly didn't realize that there was something wrong with what I was doing and how I lived my life around food, actually, until I went through the NTA training, my nutrition training. When I was going through that program, it was like a really small section on like disordered eating. This is what this can look like. And basically just to try and sum that up, I think all it said was like, if you constantly think about your next meal or like the food that you're going to eat every single day, or are constantly counting like calories and carbs and just like have this really intense anxiety around food, something might be wrong. Like those aren't normal habits. And that was actually the first time that had been brought to my attention, which blows my mind because a little bit of backstory here is I had really bad hormonal issues, and my eating disorder was very bad, but at the time I didn't know it was an eating disorder. I was missing my periods, having all kinds of like really bad hormone issues going on. Went to my gynecologist like multiple times, and no one ever asked me about my food intake or what that looked like. So once I kind of put two and two together and got back on track with like eating right, and I'll backtrack again and go into that. But long story short, like this is really easily missed by health professionals, especially in the functional medicine world, because we tend to use healing diets a lot, which Megan and I also stray away from unless it's like absolutely necessary. But there's just so much disordered eating going on in our world with like diet culture and all the things. So I'll take it back to when this started. I grew up in a household where my mom was very conscious or self-aware of the food that she was eating as far as low fat diets, low carb diets. I think back then it was like the Atkins diet or like the South Beach diet was like the really big thing. And you don't think about it, but if if you're around that, growing up around that, and that's constantly the image that's being put in front of your face to kind of like to lose weight or just like my body is never enough, essentially, you don't realize it, but like that sticks with you. And I really do think that is where part of my disordered eating stemmed from. I don't think it was all from that. But yeah, so I that was always in the back of my head was like watching my carbs or counting calories and whatnot. And then, of course, there's stress and anxiety that comes with that around food. And then when I got into like high school years, I would say is really when my digestion issues got bad. And then I started to do a ton of research on my own into functional medicine, healing diets, like the low FODMAP diet, all the things, paleo, whatever, cutting out all the sugar, all the carbs, all the things that are bad for you. And really from there, it spiraled. And it took me like 6 or 7 years to realize that, like I said, what was happening was not normal. And I mean like food had a hold on me, like complete control of my life. I was constantly thinking about food. I had so much anxiety around it. I mean, it got to the point too when I was trying all the different elimination diets to actually like heal my gut and make myself better, where of course I was fully afraid to eat. I never wanted to go out to eat. I missed out on so many different events with like friends and family just because there was so much fear around food and it was so draining and exhausting. I don't wish that upon anyone. Like, Megan, I'm sure you know, it's just like it has such a hold on your life when you're constantly thinking about food like that. Um, so when I went through the NTA and realized like, oh, this isn't normal. I need to get help with this. This would probably really benefit me to dive in deeper and see what's going on here. So I did go to regular talk therapy for probably a year and a half, and then COVID happened. And I was going in person to therapy, and obviously things kind of went like completely haywire. There was no in person therapy going on anymore. So I stopped. And by that time, it had been a year and a half, and I had learned a bunch of different tools. I learned more about the why behind the control, like the control sense of eating and the fear behind, it had a lot to do with body image issues. And there was a ton of different things to be broken down behind this eating disorder, lots of different trauma stuff. And I had been in therapy for a year and a half at that point, and I was diagnosed with binge eating disorder and orthorexia, which is essentially just fear of not eating clean foods is the best way that I can put it. So those two things combined made it really difficult to eat anything. And it was still happening. Like I was in therapy for a year and a half. Yes, it was slightly better. I spent a lot of time working on body image stuff and just getting myself to eat enough food again. I would say that's a big thing. And yeah, COVID hit, I stopped it, and I was still binging at night. Like there was just something that I was like, this isn't right. Like I need more than this. And that's really when I ventured into the energy healing with like emotion and body code work. I was actually doing it with my friend who was a practitioner at the store that I was working with. And crazy thing. I know it's not like this for everyone, but within 3 months of like adding in the energy work to my journey with my eating disorder and disordered eating, things things change so rapidly. It was very, very incredible. I remember looking back, it had been like like I said, 3 months, looking back a month after that. And I was like, oh my God, this is like the first month that I didn't have a binge episode. And it was so crazy to me. And then from then on out, like my journey was different because I was focusing more on that energy side and like regulating my nervous system and getting comfortable with my body. I think that was a really big thing for me, is just accepting this is the way that I look and I am happy with it. Like my body carries me around every day. It does a lot of work. That was a huge piece of it for me. And I know it is too with the clients that we work with, like just that body image piece in general. And again, I know there's lots of different stuff behind this for everyone. I would say it's not like one blanket reason that everyone has like some sort of disordered eating pattern, but that was kind of my story behind mine. And I want to add into at the end of it, like even after all the energy healing stuff and I was getting better, I truly let myself eat whatever food I wanted to, even if it wasn't the best of food. Of course, I have the training behind what food is best, and that is important to me to eat as much real food as I can. But I didn't, you know, during the healing process, I didn't limit myself from sweets and all these other things. And like, that's how I got better, was taking away my restrictions, which sounds so crazy. And I'm sure for anyone listening too, you're like, oh my God, taking away the restrictions of food. Yes, believe it or not, it can be super helpful to just eat regular food and listen to your body. But yeah, I feel like that's like my journey in short with disordered eating. And yeah, things really got better when I focused on the nervous system aspect of it. And then of course dove into a couple other things like mold that came up too.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, we're gonna dive deeper into the body image stuff because I've even had a lot of things come up. I'm gonna share my story, but I also have some recent stuff that I wasn't sure if I wanted to share, but I think I am going to share today about some of the recent stuff.
Okay.
And so you'll get a little taste of my trip to Colombia today, and a piece. And there's a lot that came up during that trip, but there is a body image and food piece that also came up here, which yeah, I think I'll share that today. So
Yeah.
let me start with my backstory. So I growing up, I will say I don't have a ton of memories of my childhood. So some things are still challenging for me to piece together, and some things I just don't remember. Memories have come back to me. Not all of them, but there are more memories there than there were even just a year ago. So I say this, and this also might be a little bit broken based on the memories that I have just as a trauma response. And I'll also say not having memories of your childhood is pretty common among people who experienced trauma. So if that sounds like you're not weird. It's just because there was some or a lot of trauma going on, and your brain is trying to still protect you from that. So the first time I really remember having any sort of issues with food is right before high school. I remember being friends with this girl, and I don't know how we got into this. Looking back, I know some of the reasons why it happened, but in the moment, I don't know exactly why it happened, but we started restricting our eating, and it was almost like a game of who can eat less. And once again, I don't remember why and how this happened, but I do remember that being a thing. And I remember there was one specific day where I had a bite of banana, and like just the tiniest bite, and I was so proud of myself and just like felt so good. And this lasted for many months, and I lost a significant amount of weight. I don't know as though my mother ever noticed anything. I remember her trying to feed me, and I would lie and be like, "Oh, I ate at a friend's house," or this and that, which was not uncommon. I didn't I My whole goal for starting in middle school was how little time can I spend at home, particularly away from her. And so I just remember really having that control. And anorexia is the word that comes to mind. I was never officially diagnosed. I was able to work out of it myself. And it was largely because I had a handful of friends who approached me and were like, "Oh, we're really concerned about you and you're not eating. And this is a problem." And then I started to adjust. And there were definitely body image issues. For me, I think more of it was a control thing. I didn't have a lot of control in my life, and food was one of the things that I did have control over. And the more that I could control it, and in this case, limit it, I felt like I had some grasp of control in my life where I didn't have a lot of that growing up with an alcoholic parent and just constantly being on edge and trying to just keep the peace and everything that was going on. And so that was always a big part for a while. And I just remember being mindful of what I was eating. I also, when I went through puberty, I was pretty skinny mini for a while. I had no body shape, and then all of a sudden, I had a real significant body shape. I grew some significant hips, and I went from like a size 0, double zero, and started creeping up. Just be like literally, my hip bones came in, and I had no choice but to start going up in sizes. And I remember that being hard, just challenging with everything else, and wanting to still be really skinny, wanting to still, and I was thin. I did have some hips. My legs started to grow a little bit to compensate, as it does when we have some hips grow, glutes, legs also start to grow a little bit. But I had a very flat stomach, but I was still very self-conscious of this transition into this new body shape that was unfamiliar to me. And I had no one to really talk to me about it. I didn't get a great talk about puberty and hormones and all of that stuff, as many of us did not. And so I just remember feeling very uncomfortable. And so once again, like food, and even I started getting into more exercise. I started working out, doing different things like that in high school, and I transitioned into college. And just, yeah, for me, it was really a control thing. Like, what can I control in my life? And food has been one of those things that has come up many times of things that I can control. And so, I just remember being mindful of body image, high school into college. In college, I did spend about 6 months out of the country, down in South America. I was studying for school. I also just stayed longer to travel. I taught English while I was down there. And I also lived around the corner from a gym, and ended up joining that gym and got into like a cardio kickboxing style class, which was fun. I met people at the gym. And I also met a trainer, and I actually ended up getting a trainer it was the cheapest thing. If you've ever as a personal trainer, I was like, how is it that cheap? But it was, I mean, crazy cheap. And I started seeing this trainer, and then I started being, once again, the food restrictions really started to come in and being very controlling. And I remember, I mean, I was working out 5, 6 days a week at least. And I mean, definitely not eating close to enough calories. And I remember just being like feeling tired and weak. And then I'd go push myself in the gym and I'd be so tired. And I did lose weight. I didn't lose a ton of weight. I probably could have lost more had I eaten more, because my body definitely went into starvation mode. But I definitely carried that through, into the rest of college here. And then getting out of college, it was kind of hit or miss. I was always aware of it. It wasn't a big controlling factor in my life. And then it wasn't until I started getting into the personal training industry. So got into personal training largely for my mental health, and I did a great job of that. And it also led to some other different patterns this time. And so getting into the fitness industry, and I loved the concept of bodybuilding. I loved the bodybuilding industry. My plan at some point was to compete. I had started prep a couple times, and I was in a prep when I got into my car accident that changed everything. But it was a lot of calorie restriction, a lot of just counting calories. I was a big if it fits your macros kind of person. And it was a lot of restriction during the week and then binging on the weekends because I'd be so hungry. And I remember I worked with this coach, and I'll never forget her. And I certainly will not name her. And I remember the nutrition plan so well. And I was working out, I was lifting 5 days a week. And I remember one of my leg workouts legitimately took me 2 hours. It was so intense. Yeah, like 2 hours at the gym. And then I would range anywhere between about 12 to 1400 calories a day. On top of that, I was doing cardio, an additional anywhere between 2 to 5 hours of cardio on top of that.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So plus I was really active. I had transitioned at least part-time at that point into the personal training industry, and it was a mess. Yes, I lost weight. Yes, I lost body fat. I actually don't think I lost any weight. I think I just lost body fat, if I remember correctly. I actually found I was doing some cleaning this weekend, and I found my old InBody tests, and I saw the percentage drop. And I remember my weight actually increased by 1 pound over the course of a 2 month period, but I lost, I think, 5% body fat. And I was starving. I did not look good. If you go back, you're gonna have to go way back. And I think these photos are still there of me in a practice bikini for bodybuilding competition. And I did lose weight, but I didn't look very good. And there was a picture of me almost a year, I think it was exactly 1 year later, where I transitioned out of this really, really restrictive diet into more of a feeding diet. And I was eating closer to like 1900 calories. I was still not emotionally in a great space of restricting and binging, and definitely working out way too much. But I remember the difference in how I looked, and it was crazy. I looked so much better. Cellulite was better because my hormones were in a better place. I visually looked so much better. And once again, I mean, if you go way back on Instagram, I think there's still a picture there comparing the two. And I wrote a post about this because I was so passionate about just like 1200 calories is almost no female should be on that few calories for any amount of time. Definitely not for long periods of time like I was on, especially with my workout schedule. So yeah, a lot of restricting, a lot of binging. And then when I got in my car accident, shortly after that, after I started having all of my issues, that's when I got into, and I know I'm just like rambling at this point in time. There's a long history here.
So did I. So did I. So I get it.
Okay. I'll take a break after this next little piece here because this is important and valuable. So when I started to get into functional medicine, I mean, one of the first things that I was put on was a really restrictive diet, and it was a 4 month elimination diet right off the bat. I don't remember the name of it. It wasn't like a standard one. It was like a specialized one. And it was, I mean, more intense than Whole30. It was no alcohol, no red meat, there were certain types of fish that weren't in there. Definitely no sugar. I mean, it was super restrictive. And I was still drinking at that point in time. And drinking was a big part of my life. And I had not quite done the emotional work to transition out of that at that point. And not that I had a major problem. I was definitely more of a social drinker than anything else at that point, but it was still a very big part of my life. And I was never a huge sweets person, but there was a lot of transition going on there. And so I spent 4 months on that diet, and then I got transitioned right into low FODMAP. And then it was elimination diet after elimination diet after elimination diet. And that was almost 3 years. And it got to the point where I was eating chicken and steak and white rice. And I would still react to those, but not a lot. And just the amount of food, I mean, the fear of putting a vegetable into my body was so intense and so high. And I hadn't found another way to really cope outside of the alcohol. So, depression and anxiety were very prevalent for me again. I was still working out, but my workouts, because I had so much chronic back pain and hip pain, was still a little hit or miss. And yeah, I was really, I mean, really struggling. And, for me going as a personal trainer, I was in gym management, I was fitness management after that. And I was supposed to look a certain, in my eyes, I was supposed to look a certain way. I mean, at one point, I couldn't stand for more than 10 or 15 minutes. And I was doing hour-long sessions, like driving hurt, all of these things. And it was, I mean, things were very, very painful for me. And I didn't look, I had gained weight at that point. I also had hypothyroid and then diagnosed Hashimoto's. So even if I was eating, I mean, I wasn't eating terrible because I couldn't. I was on these elimination diets and I was still gaining weight. And that really, really hit hard with the body image issues. And I mean, I feel like only fairly recently have I really come out of that. It has, over the years transitioned differently, but I feel like really transitioned to that recently. And certainly I'll share more on that later.
Yeah. And like you said, like you were saying, you feel like control was a really big thing for you behind the disordered eating. And for me, struggling with, I mean, like low self-worth and not being good enough has always been like a core issue for me. And like you said, it's transitioned to looking different ways throughout my life. Like it's still something that I work on today, but it looks completely different than when it looked like 6 years ago. And that, for me, that was a really big thing, is just never feeling comfortable with myself. Like, and even saying that, where I am now, thinking about where I used to be, is crazy to me. I didn't even think it would be possible to get to where I am today, to be quite honest with you. Just, I mean, crying, like literally crying, looking in the mirror, looking at my skin. I had a lot of acne because, of course, my hormones were way out of whack, eating very little food. And for reference, you said 1,200 calories a day. I'm pretty sure that's like what a toddler is supposed to eat. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's close to that. So yeah, think about that as an adult. Like, we need way more food than that. But yeah, just like the body image part is this part means a lot to me because it is shoved in our faces, like with in society, with diet culture. And when I say diet culture, if you don't know what that means, and correct me if I'm describing this wrong, but diet culture just means like what is being shoved in our faces, like what's being presented to us through social media, on the news, through magazines, journalism, whatever you want to call it. All of these like low calorie restriction diets, cutting out carbs, all of these things. And
I also just want to throw one other thing in there, because this is a big thing for me in particular, especially with the fitness background. It's just the crazy workouts, the high intensity, especially for women, but I know men struggle with this too. I've worked with men who also have body image issues in both directions. And yeah, so also like the fitness piece of this. And yes, movement and fitness is good in the right amounts, when appropriate and balanced with everything else.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you added that, because and there's plenty of people, and I experienced this myself, where when I was going through limiting my calories and not putting enough food in my body, also trying to run on the treadmill and do crazy amounts of yoga and weightlifting, all these different things, to the point where, I mean, I was passing out, like falling asleep after every single meal that I would eat, because my blood sugar was so unbalanced. At night, it was just like, I mean, I knew right after I ate dinner, I was going to fall asleep when I sat down. And yeah, so what I'm getting at here is that the body image piece is really, really important. And I feel like for people, especially the people that we have worked with and from personal experience, when you start to dive into the why behind, why am I so uncomfortable with myself? Why is it so difficult for me to look in the mirror and be comfortable with the body that I have? Of course, it's even worse now with social media and being able to quickly pull things up on your phone and compare, tons of comparison going on. But really, I feel like the easiest way to start to get to the root of some of these things is to start asking yourself why. Like, why am I not comfortable with myself, and kind of dig in from there. And then of course, with the restrictive dieting part, and I say this because I was using that to try and heal my gut issues and try and make myself feel better, make my life more tolerable, because I literally couldn't eat anything. Again, not going to happen unless you're regulating your nervous system. So like, you could, in Megan experience this too, like you can eliminate everything. You can just be eating chicken. That's not okay. That's not normal. That means that something else is going on. There are other things that need to be worked on. And if anything, incorporating more food in your diet in a different manner, it's going to look different for everyone, is going to be more beneficial for you, not trying another restrictive diet.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to share just two stories here, and they're very similar and part of bringing in Colombia now. I'm going to backtrack first, but I've spent a lot of time in healing spaces with other women, and and in these healing spaces, yes, we are largely using psychedelics, and also just it's connecting with women. And for me, it's been an experience of connecting with women in very different ways. And there's no pettiness, there's no competition, there's open and free conversation, really, with anything and everything. I can't think of a topic that hasn't been touched on in one of my retreats or circles or groups, anything that's come up as taboo. And, I'll never forget during one journey, we were really talking about body image issues. And someone asked me personally, it was just the two of us speaking, if I liked my body. And my answer to her was, it's good enough. And what I really meant by that is, no, I'm not at the exactly how I would physically love to look at this point in time. And I also know what it would take to get there. And it's not a priority. And that's not the time where I want to spend my time. I was really focusing at that point in time on growing my business, on developing my business, on sleeping, on stress management. I was going to the gym probably 1 to 3 times a week, nothing crazy. I really was not worried about my eating at that point in time. Not that I was eating terrible, but I could have definitely done better. There was, a few too packaged things that was probably in my regular routine, just because I didn't have the time and energy to cook, because that time and energy was spent doing other things. And that's kind of where I landed on it. I'm like, yes, it's good enough. I mean, my body doesn't hurt, which is a huge thing for me. Just if you've had chronic pain, you would do just about anything not to have chronic pain. And for me, not having to deal with that chronic pain was everything. And so that did shift my image a little bit, even though I did gain weight during that time. I did struggle, but it got to a point where I almost like, it is what it is. It's my body is working, it's serving me, and it's not in pain all the time. And that's what I care most about. Even if, yes, there are certain things that I would have loved to see differently here. So let me fast forward here. So the beginning of this year, end of last year, beginning of this year, cheese was reintroduced into my diet a little too hard. And the holidays, it just stayed in there, among some other things. And I was struggling with a lot of stress, some different emotional things, and emotional eating came back in. Not that I was eating terrible, but I would find myself, sitting and watching TV for several hours, kind of binging some things, aimlessly snacking. And yeah, I put on some weight. I have no idea how much. Just visually, I could tell that it was going on. Sleep was also really disturbed. I did do a good job in backing off of my workouts to help a little bit with that. And going into Colombia, there's a dieta that you're supposed to do, a special diet. I don't even like the word diet, but a special way of eating to help your experience. And some things are really important, like they're not eating turkey leading up to it is very important. There are enzymes and different things in turkey that can mess with the medicine. And so there were some very important things. So About a month out, I started to transition into this diet, and chicken had not been a big thing in my life. Just was real tired of chicken, and chicken was not a consistent piece in my nutrition. And I had to reintroduce it because it was one of the few meats I could eat, and or I was supposed to eat. We'll say in quotations, supposed to eat. And I had a really challenging time. I wasn't eating enough, and I wasn't getting enough calories. And I remember talking to someone who was supporting me and being like, I am really tired. Like, I don't think I'm eating enough. And so I actually transitioned off of the dieta and then did it a little bit stricter about five to 7 days before leaving for Colombia. And I noticed a massive shift. And really all I did was I added in red meat. Was like the biggest thing. And I felt like I could eat more. I felt like I had more energy. I have a history of iron overload issues. And so it's interesting to me that just the red meat, but I really think it was a calorie thing of just, I needed more calories, needed more fat, probably in particular, back in because I just wasn't getting enough. And so during Colombia, the food was amazing and so clean, so fresh, just like, and I was eating, a lot of fruit, which I'm not a huge fruit person. I eat a lot of berries, but outside of that, I don't eat a ton of fruit. With fresh fruit every day, all day. Give me all of the fruit. I mean, you could see the mango trees, the papayas, like all of it, the pineapple, it's just amazing and so good. And there's also a lot of times where you're not eating. You fast going into journey space, and there were 4 journeys over the course of 7 days. And so there's periods of time where you're not eating, and you need to not eat. It is very important that you not eat. It's not a restriction thing. It's like for your body to be able to handle the medicine, it's important that you don't eat. And I definitely lost weight, as did all of us during that time. And coming back, I was really curious, and I didn't lose a ton of weight. I don't think. Once again, I don't know exactly how much it was, but definitely a little bit. And I remember thinking coming back, all right, well, we're just gonna kind of see around. I don't want to restrict. I know supporting my body during this time because there was a lot energetically and emotionally coming up that it was really important. And I'll say since I've been back, there's been no emotional eating, rarely any snacking unless I maybe for some reason couldn't eat enough, particularly at lunch, like during the parasite cleanse. Just there's a couple of days I could not eat enough at lunch. And so I'd have just, a good snack, but it was not an emotional thing. It was, hey, I'm hungry. My body needs some food. And I mean, I've cooked most of my meals since I've been back, and I probably lost like 10 to 12 pounds since I've been back. Once again, I don't know exactly, but I think that's where I'm landing right now. And it's really interesting because had to check in with myself a few times, knowing that I'm losing weight. I can see the physical changes going on in my body, and being aware of my history and being a coach and being like, all right, we're losing weight. That is okay. However, let's just make sure we're also sleeping, fueling our body, and getting enough broad spectrum nutrients. Am I restricting especially carbs? The answer was no. I was eating white rice and potatoes and different things like that. And am I over exercising? Am I counting calories? Am I doing all of these things? And the answer is no. It's really just the emotional relationship that has changed since I've been back. And I'd say this is probably the best relationship I've ever had with food. I have gone through other periods of time, especially after starting microdosing with psilocybin, where that relationship definitely started to change. But it's very different now. And once again, just being aware of my history, I've had to check in with myself a few times just to make sure I'm doing this right. And I feel good. I feel probably the most comfortable with my body, and my body feels like my own in a new and different way. And I don't think it has anything to do with weight or how I actually look. I really believe it's more of the emotional side of things in where I am, and just the confidence and groundedness that I feel in my own body that is making the biggest difference. So I just wanted to say that because I also don't want to demonize weight loss, because that is not a bad thing. And really the emotional relationship, most of this comes down to the emotional relationship that we have with food, that we have to our bodies. Are we punishing our bodies? I go to the gym twice a week, and it's restorative, and I feel strong. I'm not pushing weight. I'm doing gentle yoga, and literally sometimes that means I'm sitting on the floor doing like really basic stretches and just holding them, and going for a walk with my dog. So I there's no punishment. It is really, my body feels so good, and just like physically, my body feels really good right now in what I'm doing, and so that is a possibility, and it is possible to come through with that. But I really think it comes down to your emotional relationship with all of these things.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing, especially because it's so recent too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, when you're like you said, you just did this journey, and obviously when you came back, like you're in a new space mentally, your nervous system is regulated in it maybe a different way than it has been in the past. In that alone, just when our body has that internal sense of safety, it's very common to just start to naturally lose weight. Excuse me. I mean, that's what we see with a lot of people that we work with too. And of course, this was probably a little bit more intensified because there was a lot of emotional work happening around it.
Yeah.
But I mean, even when I first started healing from binge eating disorder and orthorexia, I gained a significant, I think I gained 15 pounds because I had to let myself like eat again. And of course, I was going to gain weight going from, like you said, eating 1,200 calories a day. That's like nothing. So it's very natural to gain weight during the process, but then you will eventually hit some sort of plateau where your body starts to feel safe again. And you just kind of naturally shed weight, whether that's bloat, water weight, whatever it is. Your body will let it go when it feels safe and ready to. I mean, it took me like a year and a half. I gained like 15 pounds, and then all of the sudden, again, like it just started like shedding off. And I was doing so much stuff around regulating my nervous system. And I also felt the best that I had probably ever felt in my life, and was enjoying my life and having fun. I was going out with friends in eating real food and eating more food at home, and just in general, like I felt so much better, and just like feeling alive on the inside is the best way to describe it. Just not that factor of missing out anymore and being so restrictive on life. And yeah, it's kind of a hard feeling to describe until you actually go through it. But I also want to note too, because this is something that I cannot stand when we talk about health. Like when weight and health are not the same thing. Like we do not judge the health of our bodies, like our internal health cannot be judged by what you look like on the outside. It absolutely cannot be. Like you could be in from experience, I can say this, you can be a size 00 and look great, quote unquote, on the outside, and everything possible can be going wrong on the inside. You can have so much depression, anxiety, like to the point where you can't even function. I want to make that very clear because I feel like that is something that is still happening in society. We talk about weight as like, oh, I want to lose weight because I want to be healthy. Sorry to burst your bubble, but those are not the same thing. And I mean, if you are significantly overweight, like you said, we don't want to discount some weight loss is good in certain situations, but overall, like weight and health, no, two separate things. You got to look internal.
For sure. And I think, and we see this a lot with clients, and I've certainly experienced this as well. And once again, this goes back to trauma and emotional healing and nervous system regulation, where we, especially women, once again, we've definitely worked with men who fall into this category as well, but women who tie their entire worth to how they look. And it's it's still, after being in this industry for over 9 years now, it's heartbreaking to me when people in general, just their only worth is coming from how they look. And I just want to be clear, you don't have to earn your worth. And if someone is making you do that, I would encourage you to really reevaluate that your relationship with that person, because that's not where our worth comes from ever, ever at any time, it, ever at any time. And if we feel that way and or it's projected onto us and we end up taking that on, it's not a healthy relationship, because you are worthy because you are a human being and you exist on this planet. That is your worth. And your worth can also come from having a big heart and being a kind person and showing up for yourself, for your friends, your family, your children, contributing to society and any and all of the ways that can happen. It's our bodies and how we visually look don't determine that. And if you feel that way, I would and once again, I've been there. I know, I've wanted the attention of the opposite sex because, and thought I had to look a certain way in order to get that, because I thought that's the only way I could be worthy. And it was also a trauma response. It was the same trauma response that my mother had. She also had, her father passed away when she was really young, and she had a lot of father wounds, is what we'll call them. There's another word I would like to use, but I will not. But we'll say father wounds. And so drinking and getting attention from the opposite sex was a her two big coping mechanisms for her literal entire life. And I also saw that as well and picked up a lot on that for a lot of my life. And it doesn't. None of that works. Finding love in yourself, finding compassion for yourself and how you look and how you feel and how you show up, that's what's going to make you feel worthy. And the looks, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really taking the time to start to turn inward and get to know yourself. And like we said in the beginning, digging into why you feel so uncomfortable around those things. And I want to add to just like starting to, because this is one of my favorite topics, just because it's so close, hits so close to home for the both of us. So important to me to just that we start to talk about this in a different way. I mean, so much so that we are around this all the time, everywhere we go. I actually have not really experienced that safe of a space like that you had mentioned within your different, whether it was journey spaces or just different communities, where it sounds like people are very self-aware and not so much like talking about body image and weight and whatnot. That is not something that I have experienced. So I make it a point to try and bring that into conversations with family, friends, because it's happening all the time. People are always talking about weight, dieting, calories in, calories out, what kind of diet they're going to do next and whatnot. So just if you are a person who is struggling with this, or maybe this conversation brought it to light and you think it's something that you're struggling with, you can always ask people to not make comments or talk about food when they're around you. That is okay to do. It's okay to say, "Hey, this topic makes me kind of uncomfortable. I understand if you guys want to talk about it. Do you mind doing it when I'm not here, when I'm not in the room?" It's okay to say things like that or to remove yourself from the situation. If it's something that's bothering you that much, you don't have to be there to listen to it. In my case, because I have been through the healing side of it, I really try to not participate in those conversations. I won't ever comment on someone's weight, whether I think they lost weight. I'm never going to say, and I feel like that sounds kind of harsh, but realistically, I never comment about people's weight if they lost weight, because you don't know what that person could be dealing with deep down. They could have an eating disorder and you're feeding into it by telling them, "Oh, you look great. Like, you lost a bunch of weight." Horrible idea in my eyes. So it's just like, let's shift the conversation around talking about what our bodies look like on the outside. Start to talk about real food. I mean, there's so many other things we could talk about, like especially within pertaining of diet, like, and this kind of goes into a different thing, which we really do try and educate our clients on more towards the end of their programs when we've got through some of the bigger stuff, but actually talking about like, what should we be eating? Like real food. We need to look at, let's stop looking at the nutrition label that lists out like how many carbs are in there, how many calories are in it. Like look at the ingredients label and look at what food are you actually eating and putting in your body. It's a great place to start. And I love bringing that one up when I'm like in conversation with people, because that is not what we're taught in school.
Yeah. And I can't tell you how many conversations I've removed myself from, especially being in the fitness industry first. When people ask me about diets and calories, I shut down, and I don't have the tolerance or patience anymore to fake it. I just remove myself because I cannot. It's just, it's so frustrating. And if someone brings it up, I'll make one comment and, hey, prefer not to talk about this. Not an area I'm super interested in anymore. And if they continue to bring it up, I excuse myself immediately. I don't have any tolerance anymore. And I don't want to fight with people. And it's not my job to re-educate them in a personal setting. And so do enough education in the professional setting. I don't want to spend all of my personal energy doing that too. So
yeah. And I mean, that's the thing too, is like we do this for work like every single day. Like, I mean, this is what our week is spent doing. So like when we're having that free time with family and friends and whatnot, yes, of course we care about this and want to make an impact, but we also don't need to spend 24/7 like doing this. We would be so drained all the time.
So drained. And I've been there. I've been so drained all of the time.
Yeah.
There's actually one thing I want to go back to that you brought up earlier. I have a couple notes here of things I'd like to go back to. So the first thing is body safety. And I want to talk about body safety in regards to weight loss, because we talk about this a lot with clients. And here's the thing. Especially with someone with a history of thyroid issues, if you have issues with in either direction, although the weight's probably going to shift depending on where you go, hyper or hypothyroid, literally you can be doing everything to lose weight and not lose a single pound. And if you're trending towards hyper, you're probably losing weight no matter what you do to try and gain or maintain weight. And both are problems if that's not what the goal is, or there's something going on in your body. And this can happen with gut issues. This can happen with inflammatory issues. I mean, this can happen with any sort of chronic issues. It doesn't, yes, calories in, calories out always matters. And it's not the only thing that matters. Hormones, thyroid, gut, literally just emotional safety going on in your body, all of that matters when it comes to weight loss. And it's really important that we look at all of those together. And this is something that we talk about with clients all the time. It's yes, if the goal is to lose weight at some point, yes, we are happy to have that conversation. We're happy to help you with that. And it may not be able to happen for a bit because we have to get baseline safety taken care of first. If you're not sleeping, if you have these chronic underlying issues, if you've got tons of nutrient deficiencies and your body is struggling from the most basic levels to survive, good luck losing weight and keeping it off. And that's really the most important thing for me is being able to lose the weight and keep it off. And so we really have to look at all of these things together. And, one of the biggest kind of blaringly obvious issues in our society when it comes to this is women going through perimenopause into menopause. That lower belly weight gain just comes right up. And it's seemingly, I think this is becoming more well known, but I think for even still like a little question mark here. But why? Why is that the thing when it comes to this transition into perimenopause, into menopause? Well, your adrenals are taking over. And if your adrenals are so stressed from chronic stress, not sleeping, not fueling your body, over exercising, your bone density and muscle mass also decrease as you age, which can decrease your metabolism just in general, even if you are not changing anything. That's biologically something that happens to us. Just one of the values of strength training is just maintaining muscle mass and bone density. And so when the adrenals are taxed already, and then they have to start taking over some of that hormone production, well, one of the signs of cortisol dysregulation is lower belly weight gain. Of course, that's going to happen. And so it's not how can we eat less when this happens? It's, hey, your body is now really showing you it is not safe. It is too stressed inside and usually outside. Something else needs to happen. And more fasting, more exercise, more HIIT training is absolutely not the answer to that weight loss problem or to that weight gain problem.
Yeah. And I will add to that. I mean, that's perfectly aligns with what I was just about to say. If there's anything that you're trying to do to help yourself and you're in this situation, stop with the crazy intense workouts like the HIIT workouts. Stop fasting and skipping meals. Get rid of your scale, because getting on and off the scale, it's not going to do you any good. I haven't owned a scale in like 10 years at this point. So, and then the nervous system regulation part. Like if you're looking for things, if there was any 4 things that you could do to benefit your body or help your body in that situation, especially if you're dealing with disordered eating, those 4 things are going to help you so much. And we'll link a book in the show notes. It's called I Am More Than My Body by Bethany Myers. Is a really great book. There's one other book, and I cannot remember the title, but we will also put it in the show notes whenever I think of it. But those two books alone are going to be really good places to start. And then, of course, this isn't easy. This is not easy work to do, especially when it comes to this. There's often bigger trauma stuff behind it, and seeking help, whether through us or, a therapist who specializes in eating disorders, whatever you choose, I highly recommend that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll also say just the nervous system regulation piece is so powerful. We've seen clients after they've done or towards the tail end of some of their bigger work, just really focus on 6 to 15 minutes of some somatic practices along with some other nervous system regulation work and start to lose weight. Mm-hmm. Just doing that without restricting eating, focusing on whole foods, on fueling the body, a good balance of proteins, carbs, and fats without tracking. And that has been the thing that has shifted the most. And guess what? They also were sleeping better, less depression and anxiety, just overall better mood, better focus, better cognition. There's so many other things that come along with this that I just want to stress the importance of that piece by itself, because once again, it's helping the body feel safer. If the body's storing trapped emotions, trapped traumas, and we're constantly in this brain pattern, in this subconscious cycle of, I hate my body is not doing what it wants, like I'm judged only on my body is my only value, and I hate the way my body looks. Your body knows that. And it's gonna have some things to say about it unconsciously. And so just really prioritizing that, it cannot be discounted.
Yeah, that's super important. And yeah, in my head, I'm just thinking right now, like sometimes it can even be difficult for us, like as health professionals in this space, because people come to us wanting to work on weight loss all the time. And it's a fine line between knowing what's okay and what's not okay, because yes, like the quality of food is important, and what we put in our bodies is super important, and the nervous system is so important, and there's so many different things. But it's just, I'm glad that we chose to have this conversation and talk about it. And just because it's such almost like an iffy topic. It's hard being in this position sometimes and trying to educate people and be like, yes, of course, we get that you want to lose weight, but there's so much more behind this that we need to make sure we address so we don't leave you in a really bad spot.
Yeah, and I've just seen it so many times, and there are, and we're gonna wrap up here, and we'll do another episode, and there's a couple things that we didn't quite get to that we wanted to get to, so we'll do another one, and yeah, just I've seen people do the back and forth, and there are some significant health issues that can come along with that, with losing weight and then gaining weight, and then especially body fat. It can be very challenging for the heart and long-term side effects. It's been a while since I've looked at the studies, but there was when I was in the fitness industry, really strong into the fitness industry, this was a big thing that we thought about and talked about, is this yo-yo dieting and gaining fat and losing fat and gaining fat and losing fat. Very challenging on the heart. And we would see that specifically in the bodybuilding community, where people, women would drop down to sub 15% for stage weight, and then jump right back up to like 20-25%, and within days, if not a week or two, which it's very really not good on the body. And there is a healthier way to do that. Healthier, I wouldn't say healthy, because I do think women getting down to that, and I think most people in this space, there's at some point, especially in the last couple of weeks, maybe not the best or the healthiest things. And if that's your passion, okay, you can do it in a healthy way for a while, but that's probably another conversation. But so yes, just it's very complex. It's more complex than most people think. And there's a lot that goes into this. And I just really want to emphasize, kind of wrapping up here, that if you are struggling with this, look at the bigger picture. It's not just calories in, calories out. There's a lot of other factors that go into that. And we would really encourage you to look at the bigger picture. Certainly, if you need help looking at the bigger picture, we are available. We offer free consultations. The link is always in the show notes and down below. If you're watching on YouTube, where you can reach out to us, and we will happily do a free consult with you and look at the bigger picture and help you dive deeper into your personal bigger picture.
Yes. Yeah. And this is one, because we're going to do a part 2 on it as well. Like, if there's questions that you want to talk about, things that maybe we didn't touch on, that we have probably talked about before, like, ask us questions, reach out, let us know. We're happy to cover some of that stuff while we're making these podcasts also.
Yeah, you can reach us at info@trifectacollective.net. You can also reach us at any of our socials, at Trifecta Collective. We're everywhere. And so never hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to support, chat more about different things, whatever you need. That's what we are here to do. So thank you so much for joining us. As a wrap up, as we say, we are brand new. Any reviews, likes, follows, subscribes, 5-star reviews, if any of that resonates, we would really, really, really appreciate it. It does mean a lot to us, and we love doing this. We really enjoy doing this. So all of that makes a big difference for us. And thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.